Right now, someone on your legal team is probably pasting a contract into ChatGPT for review. I know this because I keep meeting these teams. Just last week, a legal department told me their standard workflow was exactly that. Paste the contract into a general AI tool, ask an open question, and see what comes back. But the second you trust it on a contract you're about to sign just because it's faster, you risk being locked into a bad deal for years, leaking confidential client data into a public tool, or putting yourself on the wrong side of a privacy law like GDPR without anyone noticing. As a lawyer who spent years building AI for legal teams, I've done a ton of testing to understand exactly how these general AI tools actually handle contracts. So before you let your team rely on ChatGPT, stick with me for the next few minutes because I'm about to explain exactly when it's safe to use, where it will likely fail on your most important contracts, and a safer way you can review them in a fraction of the time so your team never signs a contract you end up regretting. To be clear, ChatGPT is a genuinely useful tool, and I want to make it clear what it's actually good for before I get into the risks. At its core, it's like an assistant, the same kind of tool you use to answer a question, summarize a document, or draft an email about almost any topic. So the biggest thing to understand here is that it was never built specifically for legal work. It just happens to be good enough that people started using it for contracts. Now, for the right tasks, it can genuinely save your team time. If you need a quick summary for a long agreement before a meeting, it can provide it in seconds. It's also good for taking a dense, complicated clause and explaining what it actually means for someone on your team who isn't a lawyer. And it can also give you a head start on a rough first draft of a standard document or some quick research to point you in the right direction. So ChatGPT is clearly a capable tool, and nothing in this video is meant to tell you to avoid it entirely. The problem is when your team starts over-relying on it for the contracts your business literally depends on. Let's start with the biggest risk. ChatGPT will give you an answer with complete confidence, even when it's wrong. On legal questions specifically, this happens a lot. And in a landmark study, Stanford's AI research lab found that general chatbots get legal questions wrong more than half the time. This is already happening in courtrooms. A researcher who tracks AI mistakes in court has logged over 1,700 cases in which lawyers submitted filings containing fake AI-generated information. ChatGPT was named in dozens of those cases, and judges have started fining the lawyers responsible, with some penalties exceeding $100,000. Now, the second problem is that ChatGPT has no idea what your company will and won't agree to. It doesn't know your standard positions, the terms you always push back on, or where your limits are. So it might suggest an edit that looks completely reasonable on its own, but breaks a rule your business already set, like agreeing to a liability cap far below the floor your finance team would ever accept. Here's what that looks like in practice. Recently, I was negotiating a contract where the other side pushed for a liability cap several times higher than what was on the table. My answer wasn't a legal argument. It was a proportionality argument. The cap already sat at 6 times the annual contract value, 12 times for data and confidentiality. Going higher would have been completely out of proportion and no longer industry standard. That's exactly the kind of judgment a playbook encodes. Your finance team knows your floor. Your senior lawyers know what's proportionate in your industry. ChatGPT doesn't. When it tells you a cap looks reasonable, it's comparing against the internet's average contract, not against your company's actual risk position. It's also inconsistent because it starts with fresh context every time you use it. This means the same contract can get a different answer depending on who's asking and how they word the question, so you never get a consistent standard across your team. Now, everything I've covered so far is about the answer ChatGPT gives you, but there's a second kind of risk that has nothing to do with the answer at all. It's about what happens to the contract itself the moment someone on your team pastes it into a public AI tool. The biggest one here is data protection, because so many contracts contain personal information, names, signature, addresses. All of it counts as personal data under privacy laws like GDPR. The moment information goes into a tool without the right agreements in place, you could be breaking GDPR, the EU's data protection law, under which a single fine can reach 4% of your global turnover or 20 million euros, whichever is higher. And regulators have already fined OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, over how it handles this kind of data. There's also the risk that your confidential data ends up in front of a complete stranger. This isn't hypothetical. In 2023, a bug at OpenAI exposed parts of other users' chat histories and account data to strangers. It was fixed quickly and no full documents leaked, but it showed that once your contract sits on someone else's consumer infrastructure, what happens to it is out of your hands. This means you've lost control of information a client trusted you to keep private, which can cost you that client's trust and you get into legal trouble. The last risk is one most teams have never considered, and it concerns trade secrets. In Europe, your business secrets, pricing models, technical specification, customer terms are only legally protected as long as you take reasonable steps to keep them confidential. That's written into the law itself. The moment someone pastes a contract full of that information into a consumer AI tool, a court could later decide you didn't take those reasonable steps, which means the legal protection for that secret can be gone. Not just because of a leak, but because of how your team handled it. I'll get into the safer way to handle all of this in just a bit, but if everything I just walked you through sounds like a risk you'd rather not deal with, you can book a demo with Legartis by clicking the first link below this video. It's a legal AI workspace made specifically for in-house legal teams. Anyway, let's get back to it. The obvious question you're probably now asking is what actually fixes all of this. And the answer is AI built specifically for legal work. A tool like this is designed around contracts and your company's own standards from the start, meaning you can actually trust the answer it gives you. So with that said, let me dive deeper into the differences between general AI and legal specific AI. The first big difference between ChatGPT and a tool built for legal is that legal specific AI is calibrated for one job: reviewing contracts against defined standards, not writing poems, not planning trips, contracts. That focus is what makes the result reliable enough to build a process on. And that reliability is exactly what lets a team move faster. For example, one of our clients, a supply chain company called Arvato, took a contract review that used to take around an hour down to under 10 minutes. Now, the second difference between the two is that a legal specific tool actually knows your rules because you load your own standards right into it. That's your company's rulebook for contracts. The position you accept, the ones you push back on, and when a deal needs a senior lawyer, which in the legal world is known as a playbook. So instead of the generic answer ChatGPT gives, every contract is checked against the standards your business already sets, and you get the same result no matter who on your team runs it. And that's a big deal because a bad clause can't make it through just because a junior person reviewed it or someone was rushing at the end of the day. The third difference is the one I think is the most important: the fact that you can actually check its work. With ChatGPT, you get an answer and you just have to trust it, and there's no way to see how it got there. But a legal specific AI tool can show you exactly how it applied each of your rules across a batch of your own contracts. So you can see its reasoning and correct anything it got wrong before you rely on it. We call that user tuning. And with Legartis, it even gives you an alignment score for each clause, so you know how much to trust it on that specific rule. The fourth and final difference between general and legal specific AI is compliance, which addresses the data risks we covered earlier, such as privacy law fines and your confidential contracts being leaked. A legal specific tool keeps your contract on secure servers in Europe and is built to protect your data. And that way, you don't have to set up a long list of special agreements just to make it safe to use. And your contracts are never used to train anyone else's AI. So the privacy and privilege issues we have covered earlier go away. So the way I think about all of this is pretty simple. ChatGPT is a great place to start getting things done quicker, but the contracts that carry the most risks for your business need a tool that was actually built for them. So with all that said, if you review a high volume of contracts, you'd rather not deal with the uncertainty of whether a general tool like ChatGPT gets them right, keeps your data safe, and follows your own rules, you can book a demo with Legartis by clicking the first link below this video. We'll run Legartis against your own contracts so you can see exactly how accurate it is with your clauses. We'll walk you through what setting it up for your team would look like. So again, you can book a demo by clicking the top link of the description. And if you want to know whether Claude is any safer than ChatGPT for reviewing contracts, then check out this video next.